Welcome, everybody. My name is Maralee Burnett. I am your astrologer, back with the messages for the week of July 6, 2026, which, of course, is right after our wonderful 4th of July weekend. I am in a different location for this summer, so everything's going to look and maybe sound a little bit different as I get everything set up for my recordings. But I hope everybody had a wonderful, safe holiday weekend. And the good news is this week's a little calmer. Of course, it's never completely calm. We have lots of things to take a look at anyway, but the excitability of that Mars-Uranus conjunction from last week, that really stirred up the weather. It stirred up a lot of fires in my area on the western half of the states, and the heat dome on the eastern half, and lightning, and that's all Uranus and Mars energy. And they're starting to separate this week, so that'll help us out a little. If you haven't been following me and listening to all of these little tidbits, you want to make sure that you click on that subscribe button now. That way you'll get notification every time I post new content, which is typically every weekend and daily. So if you haven't been following me, again, make sure that you are becoming a member of my website, MaraleeBurnett.com, and then join me on Instagram or TikTok or whatever works for you, and take a look at my daily tarot card messages. So I blend in with the tarot message whatever's going on astrologically for the day as well. So you get a real big picture of everything that you are working on and dealing with on a daily basis. And then for all of my written content, that's on the website, MaraleeBurnett.com. Become a member. And then that way you have access to all of that free content. And all of the written content for July is out there, which includes a monthly horoscope and a new moon and full moon article. And August is already done, and that has the eclipses, which will include the first set of eclipses as the nodes will shift here at the end of July. So we have, of course, a full moon lunar eclipse, which is the wrap up of the last 18 months of work with the North and South node in Pisces and Virgo. And then we have a fiery, powerful new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Leo that is going to start off quite a long period of time through Leo and Aquarius. So you don't want to miss any of that. And like I said, you can go out and read it and get a preview for all of the details. Make sure you check all of that information out. And of course, this week we'll break it down day by day and give you a little bit more detail. So the combination of what I do on these recordings, the tarot cards, and those written articles, that really gives you all of the angles so that you can be fully prepared on how to show up and how to work with the energy. It's not what's going to happen to me. It's what can I make happen, or what can I change? How can I show up? That's what we discuss when you book readings with me as well. And even though I'm away from home, I am still doing readings. So, but make sure you get them scheduled, because my calendar will be blacked out more than usual. So you'll want to make sure you take advantage of that. All right. With that said, let us get started, of course, with the wonderful AstroGold software, and take a look here at Monday, July 6th of 2026. So the biggest information that we are working with as the week launches is this big old fat square between the sun in Cancer, which is almost halfway through its time here in this sign. At 14 degrees, it is facing off in a tense conversation with that Saturn in Aries energy. So Saturn in Aries, and then this 90-degree angle with the sun. Sun's our success. So in order to be successful, we might need to break free from an old model, an old system that no longer works for us. And that, of course, is going to upset the old man that is Saturn, that wants to keep us down and keep us small, keep us restricted, and making sure that we're following his rules, doing what he wants us to do. But your desire when you have the sun in Cancer is to feel something, where Saturn in Aries is very focused on just itself. The sun in the sign of Cancer is focused on feeling and family and emotions, and there's just this conflict between what the family wants and needs and what you want and need. And so there's a bit of a tense discussion. Now, this can be for the collective, this can be for you as an individual. But as we talk about the individual transits, if you have planets that are near these degrees, you will likely experience some kind of conflict on a personal level. If you do not, then you may experience it through whatever's going on in the collective. So you middle degree Cancer suns or moons or rising signs or any of your personal planets are going to feel like there's something that you need to be doing differently. And maybe you need to break free from something that's holding you back and tying you down and, again, making you feel restricted. So that's what we are kicking the week off with. And then some reminders from last week as we go through each of this day's events is we still have the conversation, and it'll get exact, between Chiron and the South Node in Virgo and that North Node in Pisces. So they're all three are at 0 degrees. So these are, again, things that you may feel if you have 0 degree or very early degree planets in these signs. Otherwise, there's this collective healing work that is continuing. We also see Mercury in retrograde, so starting to make some progress over the area that it is covering. And remember, this is energy that was already covered earlier in the year by Jupiter as it was going through its transit. And so now, especially as Mercury starts picking up the pace, then the things that we may have missed from the big picture work, which is Jupiter, we're going to start to see that highlighted now that Mercury is moving through this area of the sky. Of course, all in the sign of Cancer, so things to do with home and family and maybe immigration, food. All of these things are getting looked at again. And of course, our feelings and our intuition. So that is all happening this week. And the minor triangle or minor grand trine that is set up between that Pluto retrograde and Aquarius. So things that are hidden in the underworld, things that are hidden in the internet, in the AI tools, right? There's that energy of transformation, death, and rebirth with Pluto that's retrograde. So there's things from the past that we are needing to reconsider. And then we have, of course, that Neptune in Aries. Neptune's going to get ready to slow down and go retrograde. And then we've been having the conversation over the weekend between that Uranus in Gemini and that Mars in Gemini as well. So those three are combining. Mars has been bringing some things to the surface that we need to see, that these outer planets have kind of hidden from us. They're all working together in harmony, but Mars, the warrior, the hero, the champion, is activating whatever work's been going on. And so I think as Mars moves farther away from these three that like to keep things hidden and beneath the surface, we may start to see things become exposed that maybe were going on over the weekend that we didn't understand, and Mars will out whatever that is. So as each day progresses this week, and as Mars moves farther and farther away from Uranus, I think we're likely to be shocked and surprised by events that have been unfolding, but we haven't been made aware of them quite yet, because of course Gemini's ruling information and education and our voices and transportation. There's all kinds of things that, even from Taylor and Travis's wedding, the things that were going on, but they were hidden. And that's perfectly aligned with this energy. And then as Mars keeps moving forward, little bits and pieces, more and more information will come out until the new moon that we'll have in Gemini, where I bet we get way more details about that or those nuptials. All right, so that's just a few of the things that have been transpiring over the weekend and kicking us off with this week, along with that moon in the sign of Aries that on Monday is speaking with Neptune. So this can be a realization of what the dream is that you have for yourself. Or maybe this is somebody like the Pope who's really speaking up and speaking out in some way. But this also can be somebody who inspires you. So trust your intuition and take action, because that's what that Aries, ruled by Mars energy, is all about, is taking action on something important on Monday as we kick off this week. And then let us move ahead to Tuesday. And as I mentioned, guess what? That Neptune energy, so it had its conversation with the moon, and now this planet has slowed down, and now it has begun its retrograde as well. Also today, we've been hearing and talking a lot about what's being called Barbo's basket, also known as a cradle. And now these energies, this is the beginning of the setup of this gift, this delivery, right? It's coming in a basket. There's something about to be delivered. Now, all of them are meeting at 4 degrees. So even Neptune, right? Neptune has now slowed down. It's hit 4 degrees. It started at 0 in February. Now it's reached just 4 degrees, and then it will go retrograde today. And also today, Uranus moves into 4 degrees of Gemini. So now we have all 3 outer planets doing things that we cannot see, creating changes together, making plans together without our knowledge. And at 4, the number from a numerology perspective, that's about structure. That's about like Saturn energy, rebuilding something. Like a chair that has 4 legs, there's something being built that will help bring us stability eventually, but it's not going to happen immediately. Outer planets rarely change things in the moment. It takes a personal planet for us to see things change in the moment. And now, as they're all sitting at 4 degrees, where they're going to sit through most of this month together, they're starting to create whatever this is to weave this basket together and start to make things happen. And so as the planet slows down, like Neptune is, which is already kind of foggy, fuzzy as far as our thinking goes, it gets even more foggy, even more fuzzy, even more dreamy and delusional. So you have to be really careful at this time with this energy to make sure you're not making any decisions or choices that you wouldn't normally make. And if you feel maybe inspired to do something like that, you really need to slow down and maybe ask somebody else's opinion that's not a part of whatever you're doing, just to make sure you don't suddenly go down a rabbit hole that you did not mean to go down. So just be cautious as this planet slows down. And again, careful around water. Like I said, mostly careful about the choices that you're making, and for sure, do not delude yourself. So that's a big piece of energy that we have starting today on Tuesday. And the retrograde for Neptune lasts all the way to December 12th. So again, outer planets create change through the collective energy that then trickles down and creates changes for you. But unless you have planets at 4 degrees of these signs, you may not notice it immediately affecting you, but it may affect others around you and then start affecting you. All right, let's move ahead. So on Wednesday, the biggest event energetically is Venus ending her time in the sign of Leo. Now, Venus is very happy in Leo. It's fun, it's joyful, it's love, right? It's passion. And it will wrap up its time. But before it does, I always say when the planet hits 29 degrees, that's our chance to prove that we've learned or experienced whatever we needed to over these last 3 weeks. And then, of course, Venus will move into the sign of Virgo, where she feels a little restricted. Doesn't mean we can't work with the energy there, but it definitely changes. And so we'll talk about that in tomorrow's energy. But as the planet, again, finishes its time here, you want to look at what you've been focusing on? Have you been focusing on love? Have you been focusing on fun or joy or learning lessons in these areas? It can also have things to do with children, all things that are Leo energy. Leo also is the king, right? And there can be a test of leadership. Maybe women in leadership roles in particular may have a significant test as we go through the day today. So be ready, and also know that when that 29 degrees, that can create crises. It can feel like someone's being very critical of you, but just take a breath and remember that you're here for a joyful experience. So don't let anything drag you down or off that path. Sometimes we just have to agree that we're not going to settle for anything that doesn't bring us joy. And that's how you pass the test. So there may be tests, especially if you have late degree planets in your chart at 29 degrees, they may be impacted by this conversation with Venus. So take a look at your chart, tune in, look at what that energy is saying to you. And then whether if it's a sextile, it might be something subtle and easy. A trine is an opportunity. Squares require change. Opposition requires balance, right? It just depends on what's happening to your personal planets for that work that you need to do to show up. All right, let's move ahead to Thursday. Like I said, it's kind of a quick week, not a ton that we have to go over, but here's a nice energy as Venus moves into the sign of Virgo. So Virgo is about health. It is about structure. It is about organization. It is energy that rules the sixth house. It can have to do with work, having a detailed schedule on a day-to-day basis, good health. And so here Venus is saying, hey, I love to eat good food, healthy food, compared to when she's in Taurus and she loves all the rich, delicious things. But when Venus comes through the sign of Virgo and she's meeting with the South Node immediately, well, then we're letting go of things that we are attached to, especially in unhealthy ways. And what does Venus rule? Love, beauty, money, valuables, all the things that speak to the senses, things that we can taste and touch and smell. So any relationships that you are in that are unhealthy or toxic, well, this might be a day where we see announcements in the collective of, relationships that end for some reason. And then keep in mind, when Venus is with the South Node here, that means she's opposing the energy with the North Node in Pisces. And so in order to see the light with the North Node in Pisces from the Venus perspective, there is definitely something that you're releasing, letting go of, or it could be there's a lesson that you need to learn from the past. Somebody from the past that you were in a relationship with. It could be work, could be personal, could be a gym buddy. That is coming up for exposure in some way again, so that you can get out of a situation that's not healthy for you anymore and then follow the light, that North Node in Pisces energy. So it could be pretty surprising events that are going on today, but for you, wherever you're feeling drawn or called to release and let go of things that you know aren't good for you and you're settling, well, today's the day that you need to do just that. So that is Thursday, and then we are moving into Friday, and we'll still see on Friday that Venus, which happens to rule Friday as her day of the week, is speaking with the South Node, but moving forward and still opposing that North Node, so that conversation can continue. And as the moon moves into the sign of Gemini, then it is stirring up this energy, this conversation between those three outer planets. So that minor triangle with that Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune energy gets activated by the moon. So when the moon comes through the sign of Gemini, it takes our intuition and our thinking mind and it combines them together. So you can get a bit of a clearer picture. So this is a big important day to tune in and trust your intuition to guide you to whatever it is that you need to restructure or you need to change, because of course we're still talking about that 4-degree energy. The other piece going on today, speaking of Venus in the South Node, is, I mentioned at the beginning, we still have been seeing Chiron speaking in harmony with the nodes. And today, that conversation is finally exact. So Chiron, the wounded healer, Chiron that teaches us to incorporate our wounds, to accept them, and instead of maybe over focusing on them or over analyzing them, using what we're learning and trying to heal ourselves to help other people heal along the way, or maybe just not even dealing with our own wounds or pain, and instead turning our attention outward and focusing on how we can help other people. But with the nodes involved, which of course are fated lessons, the past and the future combining to help move us forward in some way, well, Chiron's the guide. So there could be a doctor, a teacher, a coach, somebody in your life or in the collective is, stepping up and doing something important that could move us forward or help us heal in some way. At the same time, with that moon at 0 degrees of Gemini, it is having a square. So that tells me there's things going on today, a T-square in particular with that moon, with the north and south node, that little red mountain. It creates a mountain of pressure. And that moon is the exit point, which can be, kind of a dramatic statement of some kind that comes out that is meant to balance our karma. So there could definitely be something quite incredible that we are learning today that will help move us forward and help us understand something that's happened in the past. And of course, for you early degree or 0 degree planets, you're going to feel this the most. And don't lose your head. That's that moon in Gemini. You can lose your head because you're feeling so overly emotional, especially from a pressure perspective. And you don't want to do that. Trust me. All right. And as we move on ahead to Saturday, we're going to start to see, of course, the moon's just progressing here in the sign of Gemini. And it is continuing to affect the way we're thinking. So you really need to pay attention to how you're feeling and the story that you're telling yourself, and you want to make sure it's true. And then you also got to remember with Gemini, it's a lot of back and forth, energy that is going on. But today, as that moon is in Gemini, it speaks to Saturn in Aries. So this is where an older, wiser person is helping you understand what's real, what's not. They're the authority figure that clears up all of the chaos in some way. And so if you're having trouble deciding about something, this energy would suggest you need to reach out to somebody older and wiser to get their feedback or their input to help you make up your mind about a particular topic. So that's what we see on Saturday. The big energy that we're finishing the week up with, there is going to be a yod with Venus. And at the same time, so Sundays are big energy day this week. The Venus energies, of course, at that 3 degrees Virgo, she's in conjunct with Pluto in Aquarius. She's in conjunct with Neptune in Aries. And this nodal point that splits the energy right in the middle, that is helping us complete our mission. And again, we have to have a lot of faith and trust in ourselves and our intuition, and, even in our spiritual leaders in some way are doing something today that is important to this whole restructuring that's coming with the Barbeau basket. So this storyline that we have, which the Barbeau basket is being created now with these two minor triangles and this opposition that's building. So we're going to be talking a lot more about that next week as well. But this personal quest is going to be strongest for some of you that happen to have energy here at 3 degrees of Virgo. And if that's you, then you're going to feel called to do something. And maybe it's help women heal, for instance, with that Venus in Virgo energy. And it would be something that you would maybe learn through the internet, again, through some spiritual leader of some kind. That would be the combination of that Neptune and Pluto energy. So you may just be drawn to a new way of healing or new information about healing that you come across in a strange, unusual way, because that's what inconjunctor quincunx energy is this weird, awkward, they don't quite fit together, and you're not quite sure what's going to be the result of it. But a yod is a finger of God, and where that finger points is through Venus. So this could be a woman, again, who is a healer or very OCD organized person, and she is helping us clean up some kind of mess in a weird, unusual way, and we need to follow where we're being guided. Always accept your mission. And it will feel very personal, like I said, if you have planets in these early degrees and in these signs. Then we have Mercury Cazimi, retrograde Mercury Cazimi. So this energy, while Mercury's retrograde and meeting the sun at 20 degrees in the sign of Cancer, is something from the past. Like I said, remember, now Mercury's covering the territory that Jupiter already covered, but now the details and the information are coming up that could really shock us. This could be a very emotional day that shocks us and surprises us because of something that's happened in the past, that even in the past couple of weeks when Mercury first moved through here, that we didn't learn the truth yet. And now as it comes forward, meets with the sun, this could, as usual, it can be a mind-blowing, shocking day. It also can just be a day where you have great aha moments. You could clear some emotional blocks that have been holding you back. This is a great time to do work where you're clearing ancestral karma. All kinds of possibilities can come up for you as far as clearing the energy. So a Cazimi, right? It's the sun is baptizing Mercury in fire, and then we can begin again. And that's what we're getting ready to do. Now, let us see, what else do we have as we wrap up the week? I think that's it. So as we get ahead to next week, this is where we are going to have the new moon in the sign of Cancer. So you'll see the moon come over here, have the conversation with the sun while Mercury is still there. And this is, again, conversations that are emotional, new beginnings that affect your family in some way. And when we look at what other planets are at 21 degrees, we really don't have any. So this is an important opportunity for a new beginning. Now, we do have a little conversation from Saturn, but it's pretty wide. So this is, again, pretty interesting that it's just the sun, the moon, and Mercury. So there's new ideas being birthed at this time, being reborn, and the past and the things that we've been learning from the past, those are coming up in a big way. So we'll be talking about that next week. But if you want a preview of it, you can go out and take a look at that article and then we're going to be talking about this building opposition between Jupiter in Leo and that Pluto in Aquarius energy. So this is the standoff between Jupiter, this benefic leader of some kind, is in an argument with Pluto, the ruler of the underworld, who has control over all of these people and what they're doing on the internet. And this Jupiter and Leo energy doesn't like how much control this Pluto person has. And so there's an argument. Now, this is what's beginning to create this cradle or this basket. So the opposition then is supported by all of these sextiles and trines in the background. And so that's where the basket gets the support. This tension is almost like the lid. And when the lid is opened, there's something being delivered. And I think it's going to take time for whatever this is that's being delivered or whatever's being gifted for us to fully realize it. But how you deal with this tension is going to be really important. And so we'll be here to talk about that next week, talk about the new moon, and there's a kite. I mean, there's all kinds of energy going on next week. So make sure you read that July article so you can look at some of the other formations that are going on in there as well. And we'll be back here to talk about it next week. So thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for liking and commenting. And really seems like you're enjoying the daily tarot cards and oracle cards. So I'll be, of course, back next week with more card messages and more details for this huge transition energy. And I we'll see how much time I have, but break out that new moon video by itself so that then I can break out the rest of the week and give you a glimpse at the new moon as early as I can. All right. Thanks, guys, and I'll talk with you next week. Take care.